We're trying to reactivate again the old Rockaway Beach line of the railroad. Now there's money for a study they're doing, and it looks very positive. Our Congressman Meeks and Congressman Jeffries both supported this. Phil Goldfeder, our assemblyman. As the next mayor, will it be in your platform now that you will support the reactivation of the old Rockaway Beach line of the railroad? And one other thing, I'm sorry, then I'm going to give the mic to you. We'd also like to suggest the name of one of the school that we would like to see, I would like to see, school chancellor. And that, who is that? Dr. Kathleen Cashin, because she turned our schools around in this community.
Two things. Number one, would I support the reactivation? Absolutely. And you've talked about this for years. This has been Lou's for a long time. He made me aware about this years ago. Now, the one thing I am going to say, and believe it or not, I had the chance to work with Kathy Cashin when I was the president of the New York City Board of Education. Kathy's a good educator, and to this day is still a friend. She's on the Board of Regents, and there are a few members of the Board of Regents. As a matter of fact, the head of the Board of Regents, Merrill Tisch, is a supporter, is a strong supporter. The one thing I've tried to be very careful about is not to name any names for any position. I will say that Kathy Cashin, as a career educator, is a perfect type person that you'd want to have as your chancellor. The one thing I am committed to, and that is the one thing, and while I'm not going to talk about names during a campaign, I'm committed to making sure that not an educator type, an educator is the head of our public school system. I think that is important again. So someone like Kathy, and as I said, she is a friend. Kathy Cashin, former New York City superintendent, Lester Young, who's on the board also. People like that are old friends, people I've had the chance to work with, people who are real, lifelong educators who I'd be proud to have run an education system. So I'm not mentioning any names, but those are the type of people that I would be interested in. And I'm going to touch on one issue, transportation, that I know continues to be an issue as the A-line still hasn't been reactivated. As we look, as there are ferry service that people are concerned that will expire, we need to find more money for mass transit, and that will give us an opportunity to be able to maintain, and I'm a big fan of increased ferry service around the city of New York, express and select bus service that we need to increase across New York City, fixing an aged infrastructure. The only way we're going to be able to do that is to come up with additional dollars. And we can't, and right now, we pay more. We have to dig more in our pocket than any other people who use mass transit around the country. A greater percentage comes out of our pocket than any other city or state around the country. I've made some recommendations on increasing funding for mass transit. Number one, talked about restoration of the commuter tax. We will never get it back for New York City again. It will never happen. But mass transit is a regional situation. It is good for the people in Long Island and the people in New Jersey and Connecticut and Westchester if we have a strong mass transit system. Whether they drive or use mass transit, it is in their best interest that we have a strong mass transit system. So we'll never get that money back again for New York City. That was about $700 million a year. We could get it back for mass transit. Number two, the 12 counties that are, 12 counties that are covered by the MTA. We should look to increase registration fees for automobiles based on weight. Big heavy SUV, it'll cost you more than a lighter, more fuel-efficient vehicle. Those two things together generate about $1.7 billion each year that should go into mass transit. That could be used to improve our system. It could be used to work and create more water transit for the Rockaways. It could be used to repair an aged infrastructure so that the A, every time, it's not when there's a hurricane, the A, every time it's a hard rain, service is suspended. It's an old infrastructure. We need to spend the money, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is to identify a few real sources of revenue. If we had $1.7 billion extra a year, we could make this a very different mass transit system. So that's what I want to do. When it comes to mass transit, I know it has been an issue in the Rockaways for decades because service is unequal. It is unfair. We need to do a better job. That's one of the ways that we can come up with the additional revenue that we need to improve mass transit.
Okay, Joe Hartigan.
In my opinion, Rockaway is the best example of the worst city planning in history. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay? One of the problems that we've had, we've never had a mayor that really loved Rockaway. So, how would Mayor Thompson show his love for Rockaway?
For those of you in the back who didn't hear the question basically was, Rockaways really hasn't had a mayor who's loved the Rockaways. How would you be that mayor? That's the question. I think the first thing is not ignoring you to begin with. I mean, that's a start. What do the Rockaways need? No. Wait a second. Look, I've been out to the schools in the Rockaways. I've been out to, to look at transportation in the Rockaways. Number of different things in the Rockaways to say, wait a second, over the years, what does and doesn't exist? It is sitting down first and having an administration that is diverse in a number of different ways. Diverse in what the people in that administration look like, diverse in where the people come from. Also, having voices at the table when somebody goes, yeah, I live in the Rockaways. Here are the problems. I live in the Rockaways. Here's what I'm going to do in my agency or working with the mayor. But it's having a mayor who will sit down and work with you, number one, to work with you in planning, to talk to your elected officials and your community leaders, to be able to listen to you. What helps to improve your community? Now, I'm not naive enough to think that we can do everything overnight. That's not going to happen. But it's also in looking at what helps short-term and long-term, looking at some real strategic planning. So is transportation part of that? Is jobs and job development part of that? Is healthcare part of it? And starting to plan, it may not be things that you're going to do in year one. Some of it will be. Some of it year two. Some of it year three. Some of it year 5 and 6. Starting to lay out some long-term planning, which is one of the things that the city really doesn't do a great job at. It's long-term planning that over a period of years, we can start to align resources with and start to bring about real change. That's how you get, that's how 5 years from down the road or 8 years down the road, hopefully at the end of 2 terms, that you can sit there and say, my neighborhood is better. My neighborhood is better, and I was involved in the planning. I was involved in that discussion. That's the only way that you wind up getting things done. When we lay out some strategic planning and line our resources and then start to move forward. What doesn't work, and you're seeing it across the city of New York, is when you drop projects in communities without real discussion. When you force it on them, it doesn't work. But when you involve people in that planning, when you involve the leadership, it works. It is making that commitment to do that.